From advertising to software as a service to data.
Across all of our programs and clients, we've seen a 55 to 65% open rate.
Getting brands authentically integrated into content performs better than TV advertising.
Typical lifespan of an article is about 24 to 36 hours.
If we're reaching out to the right person with the right message and a clear call to action, then it's just a matter of timing.
Welcome to the MarTech Podcast, and I Hear Everything production. In this podcast, you'll hear the stories of world-class marketers that use technology to drive business results and achieve career success. We'll unearth the real-world experiences of some of the brightest minds in the marketing and technology space so you can learn the tools, tips, and tricks they've learned along the way. Now here's the host of the MarTech Podcast, Benjamin Shapiro.
Welcome to the MarTech Podcast. I'm your host, Benjamin Shapiro, and today we're going to talk a little bit about data and technology in a AdTech episode of the MarTech Podcast. Joining us is David Finkelstein, who's the CEO of BDEX, which was established in 2014 as the first ever data exchange platform. BDEX is one of Inc. 5000's fastest growing private companies in the United States, combining hundreds of data sources in real time into one unique data infrastructure. And today, David and I are going to discuss generative AI's impact on AdTech. All right, here's a data tech episode of the MarTech Podcast with David Finkelstein, the CEO of BDEX. David, welcome back to the MarTech Podcast.
Thank you, Ben. Great to be here.
The prodigal son returns. Rumor has it your house was underwater. There was a flood in Florida. We took a couple months off from recording our data tech episodes. And finally, everybody has dried off and now we're back to have you here. I'm sorry to hear about the house, but I'm thrilled to have you back as our guest on the MarTech Podcast. How you been?
Thank you. Appreciate that. It was definitely a trying 4 months or so after Hurricane Ian, but good to be back. Lucky that my home is livable, unlike so many others. So just grateful for that and grateful to be right back at it.
I try to avoid statements like thoughts and prayers because they generally fall on deaf ears, but I definitely was thinking of you during Hurricane Ian, and I've been thinking a lot about not only you, but BDEX as well, as we've seen a tremendous amount of development in marketing and technology over the last few months. Specifically, everybody's talking about ChatGPT. Generative AI is always on our minds. It's changing how we think about developing content, how we do our research, how we produce our creative, all sorts of impacts on marketers from this new wave of technology. Talk to me a little bit about how artificial intelligence, specifically generative AI, is impacting the ad tech world.
Yeah, I think it's a great topic, and I look forward to digging deeper into it. I think that a lot of people are talking about AI specifically, right, because of ChatGPT, but there's a lot of other things going on in AdTech and MarTech that people don't even realize there's AI behind the scenes of it. And so at BDEX, we do some things with respect to helping build audiences using AI. I know that there's other companies that are doing analysis of advertising campaigns to improve performance using AI. There's a lot of generative AI around sales and marketing and email platforms and things like that, that I think has gone unnoticed. And I think it's important to talk about that because I think that there's this general consensus that everything AI is somehow related to ChatGPT because it's the only thing anybody's talking about these days. So I think it's important to understand that there's so many other types of AI that are being used today that just didn't get the hype.
In an earlier episode of the MarTech Podcast, I think it was the first episode I recorded this year, basically in January, all we talked about was ChatGPT and what does it actually mean. But somebody described the waves of artificial intelligence in sort of three phases. There was the if this, then that type artificial intelligence, which was basically, hey, here's the rules for chess. Can the computer beat a human in chess? Then we went into the big data understanding patterns of behavior, which was the sort of Google-esque artificial intelligence wave. And now we've moved on to generative AI. When you think about the impact of ad tech, are we focusing on big data, pattern recognition, building things like lookalike audiences, or has ad tech actually got into generative AI and the chatbot type functionality yet?
I think in some ways, when you look at lookalike audiences, right, people don't think of it as generative AI, but in some ways it is. So you're looking at not only are you doing that data analysis, but you're also generating an audience that is specific based on certain types of inputs. So that's generative AI is you're generating an output that didn't exist before using some other inputs. And so to me, when you look at lookalike audiences, depending on how they're being generated, but depending on the data and how it's being analyzed, is it using a specific data set that is fixed, or is it looking at a data set that is constantly changing? It's more real time. And the more real time it sort of is, I think the more generative the output can be.
So talk to me about some of the more practical applications of artificial intelligence in ad tech. Is it all ad targeting? Is it understanding campaign management? Is it flighting? Where is artificial intelligence actually being used?
I think it's all of that. So there's evidence of it in building audiences. There's evidence of it in doing analysis and then altering the campaign based on that analysis. It even goes so far as looking at the patterns that are related to a flight, an ad campaign itself, but not necessarily, it doesn't have to be the whole campaign. There are some that are literally looking at it as an audience of one. Every individual has its ability to generate patterns. And so rather than looking at the entire audience, there are some technologies that are literally looking at an audience of one. What is this individual doing? And based on that pattern, what kind of ad should I show them?
So how much is artificial intelligence something that we're already using and relying on? And what do you think the wave of artificial intelligence is going to be that marketers haven't really grasped in ad tech?
I think it's still very much in its infancy. I think that there's a lot of it going on and at different levels of complexity, but it hasn't really gotten the hype like something like ChatGPT has, simply because it's not something that everyone can play with. It's not like everyone is going to log into a platform and start playing with how your ad gets targeted. There's only, a certain audience for that. That audience is whoever's running those campaigns and the media buyer or whatever platform is generating those ads. So it just doesn't get the kind of hype that something like a ChatGPT does, because anybody can log into that and play with it. But I think that there's a lot of it going on in various different ways, but it's still very, very much in its infancy. I think that it's something you're going to see grow more and more, simply because ad targeting is getting more and more difficult. We've talked in the past about all the policy changes and tracking limitations and things like that. And so if we can't do that kind of targeting, then we have to figure out another way. So you're going to see more and more of these types of technologies take over, where there's AI that is actually being used to target the ad and make the decisions about what kind of ad should be shown to a consumer based on some historical data that's being analyzed.
I feel like artificial intelligence, like any other technology, can be used for good. It can make our ads more efficient. It can help you target your audience more effectively. They could also be used for evil. What are some of the nefarious ways that the bad guys are using artificial intelligence to do things that you might not necessarily want them to?
Yeah, unfortunately, the bad guys are always there too. And that's when you look at things like ad fraud, bots and click farms and things like that. Believe it or not, a lot of them are using AI. They're trying to figure out the best way to create fake clicks that look like real people. So they're looking at human patterns of what people do when they're on a website or what they click on, and trying to mimic that so that the bot can look like a real person. And unfortunately, that costs advertisers a lot of money these days, even billions of dollars, literally.
So David, give me an example of how you and BDEX think about adopting AI and integrating it into your services.
Yeah, so we've created a product that we call OmniIQ, and it is an AI product that looks at first-party data. It does an analysis of first-party data. For example, your Best Buy, you're looking to find more people that buy big screen TVs. So you have a data set of people that bought big screen TVs, and that's your first-party data. So our goal with our AI is about helping you leverage that first party data. It's one thing to advertise more to your existing customers, but what we really want to be able to do is help companies take that first party data. Here's your best customers, and find more people just like them. So our AI is really designed to do an analysis of that first-party data. And we can actually do that in real time. We can put a tag on your website. We can track people coming to your website. These are the people that you want to track, and you want to attract more people just like them. Our system analyzes those people, looks at thousands of data points about them, and then it looks for more people in the ecosystem that look like they have the same patterns as those customers of yours. And then we take that and we make an audience out of it. And we say, okay, here's this group of people that looks like a lot like your best customers. Build that audience, throw it out, activate it on some ad tech platform, whatever you'd like, run your new ad campaign. So as you now run this new ad campaign, it's really targeted to people that look like your best customers. And we can continue to feed the AI as more and more people come back to your website and track them again. And it continues to learns more and more, and gets better and better as it runs.
The more that you talk about the way that BDEX is using artificial intelligence, the more that I'm thinking about the difference and I guess the down market applications for artificial intelligence. It used to be that Facebook, Google, Twitter, all the ad platforms were the companies that were most effective at helping you do things like building lookalike audiences, consuming mass amounts of data, taking a signal, and understanding who else is similar to the consumers that you're targeting. Now it seems like organizations, while still large in stature and importance, BDEX is not Facebook. It is not Google. It's not Twitter. Are there other ways that companies that are down market from the enterprise grade data sources like the big boys, how are they able to get access to the artificial intelligence technologies?
I think that's what companies like ours, and there's others that are doing different technologies in different areas using AI, are trying to democratize that and make it so that it's available to anyone. It used to be that you had to be a Google or a Facebook or an Amazon. Those are the only guys that had the tech, the engineers, the resources, the money to build these kinds of platforms. But now, looking at a platform like what we've built, our goal is to say, hey, you don't have to be Google, you don't have to be Facebook. You can now leverage this technology and compete with those guys and really make it more a tech that's available to everyone. And I think that you're going to start seeing more and more of that. You're seeing it as an example with ChatGPT, but you're going to see more and more where now we've gotten to the point where the processing power to process this amount of data is more achievable. So because of that, we can build a platform like this. We can give others access to it. And you're going to see lots of different use cases across AdTech, MarTech, FinTech, whatever else, where these kinds of things are going to be able to be achievable by smaller companies instead of having to be one of the big guys.
We're at a fascinating time for the transition in marketing and in advertising as well. We're seeing the privacy restrictions, the focus, the scrutiny, the lawsuits, they're all being aimed at the biggest players in the industry. And yet the technology that these companies have used to gain an advantage is now being applied down market. We're going to see more competition across the landscape in MarTech, in AdTech, in every industry, and artificial intelligence is one of those technologies that I think is really going to be a game changer, even for companies that aren't the size and stature of the biggest tech companies in the world. And that wraps up this Data Tech episode of the MarTech podcast. Thanks for listening to my conversation with David Finkelstein, the CEO of BDEX. Join us again tomorrow when David and I continue our conversation talking about how you can understand ad fraud. If you can't wait until our next episode and you'd like to learn more about David, you can find a link to his LinkedIn profile in our show notes. You can contact him on Twitter. His company's handle is BDEX, that's BDEX, or you can visit their website, which is bdex.com. Just one more link in our show notes I'd like to tell you about. If you didn't have a chance to take notes while you were listening to this podcast, head over to martechpod.com where we have summaries of all of our episodes and contact information for our guests. You can also subscribe to our weekly newsletter, and you can even send us your topic suggestions or your marketing questions, which we'll answer live on our show. Of course, you can always reach out on social media. Our handle is MarTechPod, MarTechPod, on LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, or you can contact me directly. My handle is Ben J. Shap, BenJShap. And if you haven't subscribed yet and you want a daily stream of marketing and technology knowledge in your podcast feed, we're going to publish an episode every day this year. So hit the subscribe button in your podcast app and we'll be back in your feed tomorrow morning. All right, that's it for today. But until next time, my advice is to just focus on keeping your customers happy.